Well, we're back at it here. We got interrupted with a fish, and Rodney picked up a nice one there. How much did that one weigh?
I think it was just about 20 pounds, 19 and a half or something. It was really nice.
Very nice bright fish.
Yeah, nice red chinook.
Anyway, the way Nick is showing us is definitely the right way to be going now. One thing, Nick, what kind of mainline pound test do you use?
Well, generally, I mean, there's two ways to go now. You've got monofilament. If you're fishing monofilament, you should probably not be fishing less than 20 and preferably 25 or 30. The only thing you got to watch about monofilaments when you're fishing them in a heavy current like this, of course, the heavier your main line, the more drag it will have in the water, so hence you end up, the more weight you're going to be have to use to keep it sitting in one place. And generally, when you've cast out into the river, you want to slow just slightly upstream, so by the time it settles, it's virtually straight out, perpendicular to the shore from your rod. That is how you want. You don't want it to be sitting way downstream, because if you'll find out if it's straight out, the hooks that you'll have the best pressure and current on your rigging, so that you have lots of pullback on your rod. So if a fish grabs it when you're away from your rod, the hook should set itself. And it's very important also you take up the least amount of room on the bar. You don't want to have cast out here and have your line drifted sitting 75 or 100 feet below you, where you're into other people's lines that are fishing below you. Generally, spacing on the bar when you're bar fishing, as you can see up the bar here after Rodney will show you, generally your rods, you put them about 30 to 40 feet apart. And that is a nice spacing between rods, so that it allows everybody to have a little bit of freedom and enough room to fish properly.
We'll talk about the rods, type of rods and reels to use later, maybe Nick, and also the rod holder and things like that. Now, what kind of water should a person be looking at? I mean, we're on a gravel bar naturally. I mean, we get guys fishing out of the boat, but is there any particular type of layout, how the bar looks, and you know, what are we looking for, a type of area to fish?
Yeah, you're right, Chris. I mean, not every gravel bar in the river is a good place to fish. Whether you're bar fishing or doing casting or anything else, there are certain bars where fish come close to the shore, and you have generally your big gravel bars with medium-sized rock on them. And if the bar has a gentle taper to it, and then maybe like for 60, 70, 80 feet out, it's a gentle slope. And generally the Chinooks like to run. You'll catch most of your Chinooks when you are bar fishing like this in approximately 4.5 to 7.5 feet of water, 8 feet maximum. Okay, now, because once you get into too deep of water, you start to lose your clarity. I mean, even when the water starts to clean up to a certain amount, and what I'm talking about is visibility. At the start of the season, your visibility is very poor, and it is, the fishery, this kind of fishing is very dependent upon water clarity. I mean, when the water is so dirty that you can only see 2 to 4 inches in it, your chances of catching fish bar fishing with spin glows is pretty limited, because I mean the fish virtually have to run right into it. Whereas if the water gets better, like if you look at the water now here, the water visibility is approximately 10 to 15, 16 inches. That is starting to get to be nice clarity, and it'll go right up to, by early fall, end of August, the water clarity will be in around the 2 foot range, and then you are in really prime fishing conditions for bar fishing. And like I said, not every bar is perfect. It's a little bit of trial and error. Just because there isn't 20 guys fishing on a bar doesn't mean another bar up the river that looks pretty good and there's nobody there doesn't mean there's a fish. There's probably somebody hasn't put the time in and tried it to find out if, you know, that bar is good. So you have to do a little bit of trial and error and look around. And you can also bar fish out of your boats. If you look below us here, there's several boats anchored out in the river, and they're anchored down where there is no bar really. They're just anchored out in the river where it's the only access you can get to it, but they catch a lot of fish that way too.
What is sort of the prime time? I know this year the season opened June the 17th. Some concern over early time Chinooks. Sometimes it opens the 1st of May. I mean, what's the prime time that a person, they're scheduling holidays during their summer holidays, that they should be coming out on the bar and taking a couple of weeks to do some fishing, Nick?
Yes, okay, well, every year is a little different, but generally the heavier run of Chinooks now in the Fraser River is the late summer Chinook, which start about towards the end of July and run right through the month of August into early September. That is the strongest run of the year now. It used to be really good early, but the early Chinooks have not had a lot of success in the last few years, and they're in a bit of a decline. So, and also you'll find early in the year the water conditions usually aren't good. But timing wise, if you were going to time to go bar fishing, you want to bar fish, the prime times are probably, I would say, the month of July and August, and possibly into early September.
Of course, then you got the Harrison Whites are starting to show up there in September, aren't they? Yes,
that's right. And like Chris mentions, there's a big run of Chinooks that go into Harrison, and it's varied over the years. It's anywhere from as low as 20 or 30,000 up to well over 150,000, but that varies from year to year. and those fish start to show up generally towards the end of August and right through September and into October. Just another thing I wanted to mention on this timing, of course, like I said before, every year is different. One year the run's a little stronger, it's a little better. Water conditions can vary. If you get a really big snowpack, sometimes the water clarity in the Fraser isn't nice for bar fishing until August. And I mean, that happens. We've seen other years when we've had low snowpacks where by the end of June the water clarity is excellent and fishing can be quite good. Then there's just not quite as many fish, that's all. But the clarity as far as water conditions are good.
Well, we got a tug coming. We're going to have to watch our boats here. So a couple of things too. We want to talk about the weight and maybe the bell there before we take a break. This is an 18 ouncer now. Depending on the rock size and the type of weight you're using, I guess.
Well, it is. I mean, there's two reasons to use bigger weights or smaller weights. I mean, you use the smallest amount of weight you can have to sit directly straight out in front of you in the current where you're casting. If you're throwing it out and it's constantly rolling down the river, you're either throwing too far or you're in a bar where there's very small gravel and you need to put more weight on. Okay, and if that happens, then you just have to make the adjustment to it. You get a bar that's got really fine rock, quite often you have to use quite a bit of weight, whereas if you had the same amount of current in a bar with bigger rock, you could get away with 12 or 14 ounces, you wouldn't have to use 18 or 20. But the rule of thumb is you want to use as little weight as possible, but will still hold you in position without rolling down the river.
Now, one of the most exciting thing is when you hear this, right?
That's correct.
And what do we do? What do we do? What's the setup with that?
Well, the bell, you can buy these bells in various shapes and that. The small brass ones, if you can get them at the vet, you can see it's a really high-pitched tingle. You get these smaller copper ones, you can hear them, but they're not quite as vibrant. And the reason they're the bell is when you're bar fishing, it's a very social type of fishing. You're sitting around the lawn chairs or walking up and down the beach talking to your friends. And when you get a bite, if you got a bell on there, you'll hear that bell ring, and you soon learn when you're on the bar, when a bell rings, everybody comes to attention, and it just makes it more exciting, and it's a really nice fishery to do, and the bells actually probably cause more excitement than anything on the bar.